One thing that I just love about One Piece, as well as with other forms of fantasy fiction, is the inclusion of multiple intelligent races, each with their own unique designs, society, and abilities. I mean, in our world, we only know about humans being at the top of the food chain and the most intelligent species, although, to be fair, I think dolphins are starting to catch up with us a little bit. Currently in the One Piece story, we have 13 known natural races that exist, and even more if you include subsets of those races, crossbred species, and artificially created ones. So strap in, folks, because in this video, we're gonna be going through all of them. Oh, may Eneru have mercy on my poor, meaningless soul. You know, it's actually funny, we will be bringing up Eneru later because he is a representative of his own race. The God race! No, it's something else. We actually haven't gotten a lot of, like, godly characters in One Piece. And no, I'm not talking about characters like Neptune or, like, the God of the Sea. No, I'm talking about, like, an actual godly character that, like, descends from on high. Like, I'm the God of the Ocean and I could just wreck this shit whenever I want. But who knows? Maybe someday. I don't know, it'll tie back to something. Okay. Well, let's start off with the most widespread species in the One Piece world. This is the species that seems to be at least dominant on the planet. It seems to have the most members of the race, as well as it also constitutes the bulk of the main cast. Well, at least most of it, because, you know, Frankie and Brook are kind of like, up in the air, though. I'm still trying to figure out what kind of race Frankie belongs to, because it's just, I'm trying to crunch the numbers and it's not coming up to anything. But these are, of course, the humans, okay? So, yeah, you might think humans, that's kind of boring, but humans in One Piece are even a little bit different than the humans in our world. So first off, life expectancy. Humans can live around 140 years under the best kind of circumstances if they're normal humans, you know? Oda came out and said that if you're superhuman, like if you develop some sort of special skill, then you can kind of go beyond other people and you can live for longer. But you know how in our world, like the upper limit for living is like 122 years. I think that's like the longest any human has ever lived. In the One Piece world, it's just a little bit longer than that. It's around 140. Now, Dr. Kureha, she is probably the oldest character that we know in One Piece that's still currently alive. She's oldest human, I guess I should specify, because there are giants that are older than her. But the oldest human, and she's 141. And Oda specified that, yeah, she goes beyond other people, so she could live for much longer. And also, she's a master doctor, so she'll be able to probably mess around with, you know, certain, like, medicines and things to keep herself, you know, living longer. Also, a thing about Oda's drawing style is that he tends to draw a lot of his male characters very masculine, you know, with, you know, huge rippling muscles. Everybody's got, like, an 8-pack or a 12-pack, you know. Even Luffy, who has more of, like, a smaller frame, still is rocking the fucking, you know, cheese grater abs, you know. So that's what most men are drawn, and in contrast to that, most women are drawn in a very overly sexualized feminine style, really accentuating the hourglass figure with the whoop, and then whoop, and then whoop. Sometimes you look at them and it's like, how the fuck can you even stand up with a waist that freaking thin? But that's just something that has to go with more of Oda's drawing style. Something else, though, about humans is that we get varying types of humans throughout the story. And this is not something that Oda has just came out and said, here's a list of all the different kinds of, like, separate species of human or anything like that. But from what we know, we have the normal humans that, you know, grow to about the same height as a normal human, you know, does, you know, in between, I don't know, 5 to 7 feet tall, you know, like a normal height for a human. You know, in our world, somebody that would be like 6'3" would be considered, you know, pretty damn tall. That kind of normal. And then you get to, like, the giant humans, though. We're not talking about giants as in the actual race, which we'll get to. We're talking about humans that just grow way taller than any other human, like Whitebeard and Bartholomew Kuma and Gecko Moria, you know, who are all, like, 20 feet tall or something ridiculous that no normal human could attempt to reach in our world. And in the case with Moria, he's even weirder because he's got, like, blue skin and got stitches and he's shaped like a fucking onion. So maybe that's why I said maybe he's an onion human. I don't know. He appears to have had that design or that basic layout ever since he was a kid. So I think this just raises more confusion of who the fuck Moria's parents were. Did, like, his dad fucking onion or something? Because that makes a lot of sense, but and then we even get weirder when we get to Impel Down, where we see characters like Hannibal, and everybody in Impel Down sort of has like a devil or hell sort of motif. You know, they got the fucking wings on their back. Some say you could, oh, those are just part of their uniform, but I think in the case with Hannibal, I think he actually did have the wings. You had Saldeth, who was like this little imp guy, you know, with the flute. So it's like, nobody ever came out and said this was a separate, you know, species of human or anything, but it seems that a lot of people have come up and thought that they are, you know, they're like some devil species or something. And hey, considering that, you know, you have Shiryu as part of like the Impel Down collective, and now he's joined up with the Blackbeard Pirates, which are a gang of like misfits in their own right, and they have a very like demonic kind of vibe coming from them. Okay, sure. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if Oda's actually going to come out and say, yeah, there's like a demonic race of people, but they certainly have an odd appearance with the horns and the wings and everything, so... And even Magellan is a pretty big guy that looks very foreboding, so yeah, I mean, humans come in all shapes and sizes in the One Piece world, but that's really nothing once we get down the line into some of the more diverse, exotic races. So moving on, we now have the Giants. Now, the Giants are something that Oda pretty much ripped directly from Nordic mythology, and he takes a lot of references from mythology and other things as well. We're going to get into that later with some other species that are included in here. I keep saying species, it should be races, you know, because species would imply, like, okay, there's, like, different, like, if we're going to say that humans are, like, the genus in the One Piece world, then there's, like, giant humans and devil humans, they're all, like, different species and stuff, but forgive me if I deviate back between them. So, in the One Piece world, you see giants originating from the world of Elbaf. Now, not every single giant comes from Elbaf. It might be, like, their ancestral homeland, you know, that might be the place where they did originate from, but some of them might have, like, broken off from Elbaf and settled down in other places. We know Jaguar D. Saul didn't care much for the giants of Elbaf. He wasn't into that sort of, like, the violence and the war parties and bloodletting and all that shit. Not bloodletting, but, well, is it considered bloodletting if you take a giant war axe and cut somebody's head off on the battlefield, Game of Thrones style? That is a type of bloodletting, I guess. But yeah, but Saul wasn't into that. So I like to think that maybe if you trace Saul's ancestry back far enough, it would probably get to Elbaf. It's just maybe his family left there hundreds of years ago and they decided to set up shop somewhere else on other islands where giants live. Speaking of life expectancy, giants are known to live for about 3 times as much as humans. Now, since humans are living, you know, about 140 years in the One Piece world at maximum for a normal human, giants live anywhere from like 300 to 400 years. The oldest giants we've seen are Lord Mountbeard and Lord Fallbeard during Big Mom's flashback arc, and they were pushing 400. They were like 390 something. They were getting really old, and they were like the really long flowing beards and everything, and they were getting a little bit frail. So, you know, around 400 years is probably the equivalent of like 140 years for a human in the context of the One Piece world. So yeah, their society, the bulk of their society on Elbaf, a lot of it is taken from Norse mythology. They have a festival where they praise the sun during the winter. You know, they are a very war and battle-loving tribe. You know, they get in the big longboats and they set out to pillage and whatever. They have a very strong warriors code. They treat Elbaf as not just their homeland, but also the god, you know, the great god of Elbaf, you know. That's what Dory and Broggy are currently doing. They're fighting on Little Garden in the honor of their island, of their homeland, of their god, so one of them can return. So yeah, that's basically the deal with giants, man. Very honorable. I hope we get to see them again. They do have a bunch of unique battle styles that are catered directly toward giants. Some of them, they require weapons, like whenever Dory and Broggy combined their sword and their axe, respectively, and they made Warrior Nation. Then later on, you have Big Mom. She's not a giant, but she used an Elbaf technique called Foreign Threats. Then we have Hyruujin, who was a giant during Dressrosa, and he used a technique just with his bare hand called Gungir. So these are all names taken from Norse mythology. We haven't really seen the Mjolnir yet, but that'll probably be something to see. We know Loki is the current prince of Elbaf, so there's probably a king of Elbaf whose name is probably most likely Odin. But yeah, really, really cool species. Hope to get to see them again, and I hope Usopp's story eventually leads him to Elbaf, because that would be something for him to see. Alright, so moving on, we're going to go from the really big species to the really tiny ones. These are the dwarves. Now, the dwarves, you might think only showed up rather recently in One Piece, in the Dressrosa arc, and you're kind of sort of right about this. They were actually mentioned way far back as Skypiea, whenever they were reading through the stories of Nolan the Liar, Mont Blanc Norland, and they were finding out that he went on all these crazy adventures. They thought that they were just fictitious. They were just lies that Nolan came up with. But it turns out they were actually true. And one of those stories was that he traveled to a land full of dwarves, and he befriended them, and he kind of became like their savior figure. And that island that he traveled to turned out to be Greenbit. It's an island that's right off the shore of Dressrosa that the locals don't really go to that much anymore because of the dangers. But I guess back in the day it was a little bit different. The dwarves just kind of like thrived on this island. Now they kind of have to live underneath it. But yeah, the dwarves, despite having a very small size, some of them don't grow much taller than a few inches. They all have fluffy tails in the back. Don't really know what that's useful for, but their strength is nothing to be, you know, joked around about. Their strength is, of course, not on the same level as, like, giants or something, but they have about the same amount of strength as a normal adult male human. You know, who's like, you know, just, you know, like 6 foot, whatever. They are about the same levels of strength as that. They can punch people around. They can knock people around. So don't fuck with the dwarves. Also, they have the unique ability to cultivate pretty much any plant in the One Piece world. That's the thing that they're kind of mentioned, like, that's their specialty, you know, and that's why the Doflamingo family, you know, imprisoned them to try to make the smiles, the artificial devil fruits, which gave them some difficulty, but the fact that they probably got as far as they did was only because of the dwarves' specialty in creating and cultivating these fruits and all these different types of vegetation. So pretty cool. I don't know if they're going to show up anymore in the story. We know that Leo is one of the members, the representative of the Dwarf Kingdom on Dressrosa, and their kind is sort of getting more along with the humans now that Doflamingo has been defeated, so their society is probably going to prosper quite well. And we see some dwarves when we get to Totland as well. Many of the species of the world are all gathering together in Totland, which is sort of like a utopia for them, with the exception of giants, and I think we all know the reason because of that. Right, so since we mentioned Noland, I guess we should now bring up the different sky races that exist in One Piece. Now, I was kind of debating whether or not to include them all as one race or separate ones. And I'm going to say they are separate because they do have distinguishing features that are different. Apparently how this went down is way back in the day, these three races, the Skypians, the Birkins, and the Shandians, or the Shandorians, lived on the moon. The moon is a place in One Piece that has oxygen, and you just have a society that lives up there. Eventually they ran out of resources on the moon, so they decided to travel down to the Blue Sea world, or Earth. The Shandians actually managed to make it all the way to the Blue Sea, and they set up shop on the island of Jaya. The Skypians and the Birkins, they settled on the Cloud Sea, which is 10,000 meters above the Blue Sea. And over the course of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, they eventually cultivated their own cultures. They probably all forgot about where they came from. They're all moon people. The reason why I'm not going to say, like, oh, like, this is like humans, where there's, like, a normal human and then there's, like, subsets, is because we don't know if there was, like, an original, like, this is the original sky race. And then that one sky race had different subdivisions, you know? It's just like three separate ones. The Skypians and the Shandorians, you can tell because they have the wings that are pointed upwards. The wings of the Skypians are a little bit smaller and a little bit straight up. The wings of the Shandorians are a little bit more ruffled, and they're kind of like more leveled and straight, but they still perk up a little bit. And then the main difference, though, between the Birkins is that they have downward-facing wings, and Eneru used to be a Birkin as well as all of the priests that he had, although Eneru seemed to have, like, ripped off his wings, because he doesn't have them. That makes a lot of people think that maybe Eneru didn't actually come from the sky originally, and I made a whole video about Eneru and his possibilities that maybe, hey, maybe he was from the Blue Sea originally, or maybe he just ripped his wings off and replaced them with that fucking weird drum thing he had going on because he thought he was Raijin. Skypian, Lord God of all. Pfft, am I right? The Sky races in One Piece are very interesting. The Skypians have kind of built up their own society, built up around, you know, using clouds as technology, and they have their own cities, and they have, like, the dials that they use. It's a very advanced culture. The Shandorians, or the Shandians, they're a little bit more on the lower end of that spectrum. They started off in Jaya, and then their culture was actually really thriving. It was really advanced. And then the Void Century happened, and they were reduced to pretty much just a small tribe. A lot of them died from something that happened during the Void Century, but the City of Gold was still there, that was still on their island, and then they got knocked into the sky by the knock-up stream eventually 400 years ago before the present storyline, and they got reintroduced into the sky with the two other races. I know this is all very confusing. To break it down very simply, the Shandorians started on the moon, then they went to the Blue Sea, had a huge society, built a City of Gold, it was super huge, world government came, I guess, destroyed most of it, small tribe, that's when Nolan met them, and then Nolan goes back, tries to bring more people to find them, Knock-Up Stream knocks them into the sky with the same kind of people that they originated with on the moon. You guys all got that? Okay. As for the Brickens, we don't know what the fuck happened to them, because their society was apparently wiped out when Eneru, I guess, came to power. He probably nuked their home island or whatever. We know that the priests are from there, and we know that Arouge is from there, so there might be a few stragglers from the Bricken Empire, but yeah, I don't really know much more about them, except they're a little bit more rough and tough than the Skypians are. They might be a more warrior-typed race, rather than the Skypians, you know, or maybe more similar to the Shandorians in that regard. But the Shandorians were kind of thrust into it. You know, they were kind of thrust into battle in an area that they weren't familiar with. They had to, you know, in order for their culture, for their values to survive, they had to take up arms. The Birkins seem to just be, like, based around, you know, the warrior caste system. Okay. But anyway, that's with the Sky people. What's next? Okay, Fishmen and the Mermen, or I guess I should say the Fishmen and the Merfolk. I was trying to think, like, okay, Merfolk, but they're not called fish folk. It's just fishmen and merfolk. I'm like, all right, whatever. Okay, so the deal with this is that this is the species that's probably the most prevalent in One Piece aside from humans. There's a really big hullabaloo about the relationship that humans have with the fishmen and the mermen throughout history. The human beings used them as slaves. You know, the higher ups, like the world government and the nobility, they used fishmen as slaves to help build a lot of the crazy things. A lot of the crazy things you see in One Piece, like Impel Down and the Great Gates of Justice, these giant, huge structures in the middle of the ocean, they were most likely all crafted with fisherman labor and mer people labor. So the difference between them, fishmen all have a basic human, you know, 2 arms, 2 legs, androgynous appearance. Not androgynous, anthropomorphic. Androgynous is something else altogether. Okay. Anthropomorphic appearance, you know. However, their actual design, in which, like, their skin color and their facial features and everything, that'll be dependent on the kind of fish that they're representing, you know. Like, a goldfish fishman will have arms and legs like a human, but his face will look like a goldfish, you know, with, like, the eyes and everything like that. And that's how that basically goes. Now, mer people, on the other hand, they're a little different. The top half of them is usually straight up human, like the same kind of skin color as humans. You know, if you're female, you're gonna have boobs. If you're gonna be male, you're probably gonna have, like, the rippling abs, like I stated. You know, there might be a little bit more of a crazy appearance, like the hair and everything like that, or the face, you know, but, you know, usually you're human from the waist up, and then from the waist down, you have a fish tail. So you don't actually have the anthropomorphic appearance with, you know, the 2 legs. However, with the case with mermaids, after a mermaid turns 30, their tails split and they're able to walk on land. Although even with that being the case, they don't have, like, normal human feet. It's like their tails just literally split, and it's like 2 webbed, you know, footings that can be used as feet. Actually, a lot of them in common with humans. I think their life expectancy is about the same. They have the same blood that they can transplant if need be. They are about 10 times stronger than humans on average. That's with fishmen. I don't know if that's the case with mer people, but in the case of fishmen, they're 10 times stronger than the average human. It's also possible for humans and merfolk and fishmen to all crossbreed, to to create like a hybrid race. So like you have Derringer, who is a half human, half fishman, a fighting fishman to be precise. And he's kind of weird because he can have like normal human teeth, but he can also like lose his normal human teeth and grow like fish teeth, and his horns, he has actual horns grown out of him. That's indicative of his fighting fishman lineage. You also have half human, half mermaids, like as was the case with Praline. Praline's mother was Big Mom, who, despite being rather rotund and sort of an example of a giant human, as I said, she's very big, she is still human, and the father was a merman at some point, we just don't know. But yeah, she is a half human, half mermaid, although we don't really know, there's not really a lot of differences between there. She pretty much looks like a regular mermaid. She's a hammerhead shark mermaid there. Also, their genetics are a little bit different from human genetics, having a much more of a play on, like, recessive genes from, like, way back. So, for instance, if a shark merman gets it on with an octopus mermaid, you know, they do whatever the fuck you can think of on how that works, you know, like type in Japanese tentacle porn, I'm sure you'll probably get something, but yeah, they do something, and then they have a kid, and the kid turns out to be neither shark nor octopus. He turns out to be, I don't know, a fishman, and, you know, so it's like two mermaids got together, shark and octopus, and they had a fishman. Now, if these were humans, this would be the time when the father turns to the mother and is like, the fuck? You know? Like, if you have two white parents that have a black child, something might have happened there. But in the case with fishmen and mermen, it's a little different story. It just means that it's no cause for alarm. It just means that way back in the genetic ancestry of one of the parents, there was a fishman in the family, and it just traveled down the line and just arrived there, just randomly. And that's why a lot of parents don't look like, the parents don't look like children, or siblings don't look similar, but it's, like, very connected in terms of, like, other kind of family values that they come to rely on, other than just, you know, like, looks. Right, so moving on, next is the minks. Okay, so the minks are a tribe that live on Zo. Zo is not so much an island as it is a giant elephant that's wandering the ocean named Zunisha, and the country itself is on its back. Just go with it, it's One Piece. And the minks themselves, they are a tribe of anthropomorphic animal. They're furries. They're basically furries. I'm not shitting on the furries. I'm just saying, if you want a good way to just, you know, envision what a mink looks like, just think of furries. There are rabbit minks, there are dog minks, there are cat minks, there are jaguar minks, you know, and they're just animals with, you know, 2 arms and 2 legs, but they still retain some of their animalistic, you know, like fangs and claws and everything like that. You know, minks are, I mean, furries are cool. I'm just saying. I ran into a group of them once out in the woods by accident. My car broke down one night. Hey, they helped me out. They had snacks. It was good snacks. But, okay, I'm fine with the furries. Also, they have a unique ability called Electro that they can call upon, and this is something they all have ever since they were, like babies. They can summon electricity just at will. Now, I don't know if this is because, maybe because they have fur all over their bodies, so they can, like, channel static electricity whenever they want. I don't know what the point of it is, but it's a special skill that all minks have. And Carrot went so far to say that when she met Randolph in the Seducing Woods, she's like, if he can't use Electro, then that's a tall tale sign that just he's not a mink. So it's so prevalent in mink culture, it's like, if you can't use Electro, then that's very unusual. Then you're probably not a mink if you can't use it. So it's a pretty cool battle ability that all the minks are capable of using. So even, like, little kids are very strong, and even the elderly are also very formidable, even though they might look, like, rather weak in appearance. They could still fucking send, you know, 1.21 gigavolts up your fucking ass, so watch out. Also, they have the same kind of genetic thing that the merfolk and the fishmen have. So you could have, like, a dog mink and a cat mink get together and have a baby, and it could be a horse mink. And it's not a situation of like, bitch, you fucking horses. It's more of just like, oh, okay, well, I guess we had a horse in the family back there somewhere. So once again, it's more about other ties rather than just physical appearance. Also, you might be wondering if they're animals, what do they eat? You know, like, okay, well, I'm gonna be biting into some of this horse meat. Oh shit, you know, there's a horse staring across you from the table like, so their credence is they eat anything that doesn't have hair on it. It seems only mammals that are minks, you know, monkeys, horses, cats, dogs, jaguars, which I guess are also cats. But yeah, things like crocodiles and stuff. They're like these giant they basically use crocodiles as horses, you know, to walk them from places. And they eat anything that doesn't have hair on it, you know, something like that, like reptiles and things. So there is no like snake minks or anything like that. It seems to be only like animals that have hair, so mostly mammals. But yeah, that's the case there. Although I don't know, have we seen a bat mink? Oh man, that would be awesome if we had a bat mink. Batman in the One Piece world. Make that happen, Oda. Don't know how that's going to happen. And then we have, of course, the representatives right now, Pedro and Carrot. Pedro is a jaguar mink. Carrot is a bunny mink, who maybe might be joining the crew. Carrot joining the crew. Pedro's probably not. Pedro's actually might die by the end of this arc, so be careful, Pedro. But Carrot, yeah, she's still around. She might be in the next Straw Hat. Who knows, right? So yeah, that's pretty much all about minks. They're a relatively new tribe that was introduced in One Piece, but they're pretty damn cool. They have a very long-standing relationship with the Kozuki family. And they're also very loyal to a fault, almost to a fault, to the point where their entire society almost got wiped out. But they're very loyal, so you know, that's it. All right, what's next? Okay, so the next are a group of, I don't know why these are separate races. I like, once again, it should be more of just like a subset of humans. But we have the long arms, we have the long legs, and we have the snake necks. And probably me just telling you their names just now have already explained everything you need to know about them and their physical characteristics. The long arms have longer arms, they have like 2 extra joints for their elbows. The long legs have an extra knee joint, making their legs longer, and the snake necks just have longer necks. Now, I thought at first maybe the snake necks would have some connection to the Kuja pirates, because the Kujas, like, worship, they're all about snakes, so I thought maybe there's gonna be something there with them, but no real connection. As far as these societies go, the ones that we found out the most about are the long arms. We've seen a lot of the long arms in the story. Scratchman, Apu, a member of the Worst Generation, he's a long arm. We see the 3 long arms that kidnap Brook during the 2-year time skip, and they kind of build him up as the Soul King, you know. They capture him on Kenzin Island. Kenzin Island is sort of like the homeland for the long arm tribe. They have sort of like a Chinese aesthetic going on. They all have sort of like the Chinese, you know, outfits and stuff. Not all of them, though, have this. There seems to be some, like Ideo. Ideo seems to... He was the boxer guy that fought at Corrida Coliseum, and he's a member of the Straw Hats Grand Fleet, and he doesn't seem to have the Chinese aesthetic. He's a boxer. And he can actually, like, bend back his joints so that it looks like he has really, like, tall shoulders, when in reality he's a long arm, so he can, like, you know, stretch out his arm and, like, leave devastating punches. So that's the case there. That's probably the most we know about their culture. They're residing on Kenzin Island, and they have a very Chinese-centric motive. The long legs, the only 2 members of the long leg tribe that we've seen are Baron Tamago and Blue Gilly. Both of them don't really seem to have a lot of stuff in common. So yeah, that's pretty much all we know about them. They just have longer legs, you know. Although it's interesting, the long arms have 2 separate joints for their arms, so like 2 separate elbows. With the long legs, they only have like an extra knee, so they're not quite as... is there going to be a war between the long legs and the long arms? I don't know. Oh, and by the way, they can crossbreed as well, because when Big Mom was going through her book of, you know, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, unrated edition, she mentioned that she did have a long-limbed human, so a long arm that made it with a long leg. Oh man, that would be gymnastically difficult. Can you imagine? Like, has anybody ever here watched Whitest Kids You Know, the tall person sketch? Go and watch that for a general idea. Like, that would be very awkward, you know? But yeah, a long leg and a long arm can get together, and they make a long-limbed human, you know, with long legs and long arms. Then you get the snake necks, which are the ones that we know the least a bit about. We only had an introduction of them very recently in the story. With Amonde, with Totland. On Totland, we have all of the representatives. They're actually, so far, all children of Big Mom. We have Amonde, and then we have the two other ones that were the 29th and the 34th daughter and son of Big Mom, respectively. I forget their names right now. It was like Jos Capote and Mos Capote or whatever. They're like Italian names. But yeah, those are all the snake necks we know. There's only 3 of them so far. You know, at least with the long arms, you know, you have Ideos like Destruction Cannon, and with the long legs you have like obviously a longer reach for kicks. For snake necks, we don't really know what they could do, like really long headbutts. I don't know, we don't know that much about them. Also, I should bring up at this point, I should have brought it up a while ago, that the first time we heard a lot about these names for these different tribes and races was during Sabaody. Whenever Duval and Sanji were going to the auction house, Duval had that list of different prices for the human auction, and you had prices for giants and mermaids and fishmen and snake necks and everybody, and that's when we first saw the name Snake Neck, but they weren't revealed for years. Okay, so next is another one that we don't know much about. It's the Third Eye Clan, and I think this is the last one. I think we're done. I think we can end it out here. But yeah, the Third Eye Clan is the one that's probably the shrouded in the most mystery. We have actually not seen a single purebred member of the Third Eye Clan or the Third Eye Tribe. The only person that we get closest is Pudding, and Pudding is a hybrid. She's a hybrid, half human, half Third Eye member. Now, this is taking cues from Hindu mythology, with like the all-seeing third eye. You know, the same deal with Tien in Dragon Ball. So, oh shit! Whoa, I think I just came onto something. Maybe Tien from Dragon Ball is Pudding's father. Holy shit, that would make way too much sense. He Kikoho'd all up in Big Mom. Yes! Make it canon, Oda! I know you're a fan of Dragon Ball. Make it canon! I don't know how you would manage that, but you could figure out a way. You're good with shit. Okay. But yeah, the thing with the Third Eye Clan that makes them so unique is they have the unique ability, the same thing that Roger and Luffy have, to hear the voices of all things. They can decipher pretty much anything. So, Big Mom was going to use Pudding's power to decipher the road poneglyphs and figure out the location of Raftel. That's what she needed Pudding for. So even being a hybrid, even being half human, half Third Eye, she still had the ability of the Third Eye. And there was also talk about like awakening the true power of her eye. So maybe there's like a difficulty, maybe because she was a hybrid, maybe it took her longer to awaken the true power of it. Or no, wasn't it like I don't think she awakened her power to read it yet, but she had the potential to, right? Like she couldn't read the poneglyphs yet, but maybe she could have once her power like truly awakened. But yeah, that was the case with the Third Eyes. They're probably going to be referenced later down the line. So maybe that's some reasoning why you could have Pudding tag along with the Straw Hats for a little bit longer. Maybe not necessarily join them, but the introduction of this clan that we didn't know anything about up until recently. That's a big deal. Now, here's the thing. There are other species and races in One Piece, but I just wanted to cover the ones that actually exist on, like, the planet themselves, that are also human intelligence. Because there, of course, are Sea Kings, which seem to be way beyond human intelligence, seem to be on, like, a whole other level, are the Sea Kings. You have animals like the Den Mushi that are used by humans. So I didn't want to talk about them yet, because that's opening up, like, a whole bestiary guide to One Piece that I'm not prepared to do at this moment. Maybe someday I'll crack that open and we'll just go through all the different animal species in the One Piece. There actually is a classification system for just the animals in One Piece, and that kind of shit. So maybe I'll go into that someday, but not right now. This was only just for the intelligent species in One Piece that are very prevalent. On top of that, there's even species and races that exist off planet. There are space pirates in the One Piece world. This is confirmed canon. Space pirates from space. They look like foxes. Why? I don't know, but they're from motherfucking space. So, Oda, elaborate. And then you get, oh, and then you get all the automated and artificially created species. I forgot to mention that before I go. So there's, first off, there's like cyborgs, you know, like Frankie. Frankie was full-blooded human at one point, then he took a bunch of random scrap metal and made him into a cyborg. Okay. You, of course, have the automata that are part of, like, Eneru's army on the moon, but they also existed on the Earth. An army of, like, automated machines, but they could still feel emotions like sadness and happiness and shit like that. So, you know, do androids dream of electric sheep and all that shit. You also have creatures that are created, or like a race or a species that's created through devil fruit abilities. The homies are a perfect example of this. Big Mom taking the souls of somebody and putting them into something inanimate and creating a whole new life form out of it. Taking the soul out of somebody, putting it into a flower, and the flower will grow eyes and a nose and a fucking mouth and begin singing Hana, Hana, you know, Hana meaning flower, so that's that, you know. You also have the zombies on Thriller Bark. Those were created with Gecko Moria's Kage Kage no Mi, his shadow power. Ripping the shadow out of a human and throwing it into a corpse would create a zombie. You have the toys that are created via the Hobby no Mi, which is Sugar's power, which is a very OP devil fruit that has like 3 different separate abilities. But yeah, those are not like true naturally occurring species on the planet, as with like the giants and the minks and the humans and all that shit. So I could maybe make videos about that on separate days, but this was just about the 13 main ones. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for your continued support. I love you all so much as that horse mink loves that fucking cat mink, you know. So thanks everybody for watching. I swear I'm not a furry. Signing out. Why did I choose to clarify that? And now everyone's just gonna comment